Labor had initially refused to publish reports into its travel expenses. They were blaming IT systems. Well, it's now finally brought out its reports into some of its taxpayer-funded spending and travel expenses, and it hasn't been pretty. The PM has been caught out spending an eye-watering $47,000 on a 3-day trip to Japan for former PM Shinzo Abe's funeral in 2022, $32,000 of which was taxpayer-funded. We highly doubt Albanese would have been so quick to spend that much had it come from his own pocket. And last week we learnt that Tony Burke spent $57,000 on a 4-day trip to the US. And it appears to be an all-round in-house Labor problem, according to the latest IPEA expenses report, because in 2022, Defence Minister Richard Marles spent $21,000 on COMCARs, and not far off was Catherine King and Stephen Jones, who each racked up $12,500 on car trips. All up, Stephen Jones footed a $43,000 hire car bill in just 9 months, while also claiming more than $11,000 for a personal vehicle, as the Daily Telly reported today. Now, Climate Minister Chris Bowen spent almost $1,500 on a single COMCAR trip to announce the declaration of the Gippsland offshore wind zone that they've now reduced in size. And Sports Minister Annika Wells spent nearly $1,300 on a single COMCAR to attend the Women's NRL in Sydney. Joining me to discuss this, Perth Mayor Basil Zempilas and Scott Morrison's former media advisor, Headline Advisory Director Andrew Carswell. Basil and Andrew, great to see you both. Look, Basil, first there was a major lack of transparency, with Labor being the first government to refuse to publish these reports. Now they're out. Look, it's not a good look, especially for the likes of Stephen Jones and Tony Burke.
First question, I reckon, and perhaps most obviously, is did Chris Bowen travel on that $1,500 trip to open the wind farms in an electric vehicle? We would hope so, wouldn't we? That would be worth auditing and double-checking. Leaving that to one side, though, I think when it comes to travel, be it overseas, interstate, or whether it's domestically in a vehicle, if you're on the ground somewhere, we want that travel to be done in accordance with the rules, and we don't want the P155 taken out of the Australian taxpayers. I won't join the pile on just yet. I agree. I'm one of those that think that our politicians should travel at a certain standard. They should be able to arrive refreshed and ready to go for their work, as long as they are doing it within the rules. That's the key part. It's got to be within the rules. More detail needed on some of them, I think.
What do you think about this, Andrew? Because especially with Stephen Jones, you know, if you've got a private vehicle at significant taxpayer expense, then why are you also having a COMCAR? And I mean, the lack of transparency is a big issue as well. How do you get away with being a government that literally comes into office promising they'll be more transparent than any of the other governments, and then they just don't publish the routine travel expenses reports?
Yeah, totally agree, Sharri. Look, I can extend grace to the PM on this one, but only the PM. I think getting the PM overseas with his staff, with his security detail, it's an expensive effort. You've got to fly your own plane. You can't really stay in cheap digs. It's expensive. But putting that aside, the other junior ministers are clearly taking the mickey, particularly in the middle of a cost of living crisis. And you think of Stephen Jones. I mean, Jonesy lives in Wollongong. He's a decent fella. But Stephen, get in your own car and drive yourself to Canberra. What is it about the backseat of a COMCAR that is enticing to you? Is it the power that brings? Clearly it is. I mean, this is an assistant treasurer. Get in the car yourself and drive to Canberra. When Scott Morrison was treasurer, he drove himself to Canberra. When Barnaby Joyce was Deputy Prime Minister, he drove himself to Canberra from Armidale. It's possible to do that. And in the case of the Employment Minister, Tony Burke, $57,000 for 4 days in Washington. I mean, what economy-wrecking policies was he learning in Washington that he hasn't already put in place here in Australia?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. No, maybe you wish he was the unemployment minister, wishing he was unemployed himself. Better that, probably, than being a minister introducing all this radical IR legislation that's going to put pressure on every single business in Australia. Now, according to the latest FinReview Freshwater Strategies poll, the Prime Minister has been able to claw back some points on his personal popularity, favourability. In the preferred PM survey, Albanese's rating increasing by 5 percentage points in the past month. Dutton recording no change. But Basil, Labor's primary is extremely low, 31%. This is even lower than at the last election, which was at 33%. That itself was a record low for Labor at a general election.
Yes, it's that one on the screen that'll be the real concern for the ALP, their team, their pollsters, their strategists. In terms of the personal popularity or the approval ratings for the Prime Minister versus the opposition leader, I don't think that will bother Peter Dutton in the slightest. I think it's very clear, particularly from his approach over the last couple of weeks, he's not trying to win a popularity contest. He's trying to win an election in somewhere between 9 and 12 months. And he wants to do that through conviction politics. He knows he'll rub a few noses the wrong way. He'll push a few to the other column. But he's trying to appeal to those sensible Australians that want lower taxes, more productivity, lower costs on standards of living every day. That's what he's trying to do. It's not a popularity contest for him. It's an election contest, and he'll be happy with this distinction.
What do you think about this, Andrew? Is Labor's primary starting to look like it could be a problem?
Yeah, I think Anthony Albanese will be happy that his personal numbers are starting to bounce off the canvas after spending months in the cellar. And that's due to the fact that he's done an okay job in the last couple of weeks. He's won a by-election. Most independent experts would say it was a marginal gain as opposed to a loss. They're starting to get there on their economic message, i.e. they've realised that there is an economy that they need to nurture and put some policies in place to help that. And so things are starting to happen. ASEAN was a success, so you can see why his personal numbers are ticking up, but it's not translating to a Labor primary vote, and that is deeply concerning. And what it says is that at 31%, we are headed straight into minority government. So really now it is the equation of what type of minority government we're going to get, whether Albo needs one or two crossbenchers to wrangle and get across the line, similar to what Julia Gillard attempted to do, or whether it will be this unwieldy, unholy alliance between the Greens and the Teals, same but different. And we're going to see, an erosion of economic policy in this country. We're going to see an increase in climate agenda in this country. And forget about what Julia Gillard did in that minority government. You're going to have a set of Teals here that will not sign on the dotted line and go away and vote as the Prime Minister has indicated. They will want to be a part of the process all the way along. They want their fingers in every pie. They want to be on foreign policy. They want to be on economic policy. It doesn't matter what the policy is. They will want to be involved and they will want to have their say.